Well, Kelsie, thank you for joining me here in Fireside Chats Sans Fire. You had mentioned earlier we Mainers, so can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and your connection to Maine?
Sure. Thank you, Leah. As you already know, because I introduced myself 5 minutes ago, I'm Kelsie Bouchard. I'm the new Chief Lending and Investment Officer here at CEI. I am what I sometimes like to reference to myself as a thoroughbred Mainer. So I was born and raised here. If you think about Maine as its own like little version of a mitten, can you see this over here? We live down here in southern Maine. I grew up all the way up here in northern Maine. In an area called the St. John Valley, in a town called Fort Kent. If you've ever had soy mix from a farm called Bouchard Family Farms, for you gluten-free folks out there, or enjoyed crackers from Maine Crisp Co., a CEI financed company, that buckwheat is actually grown on farms, a farm where my dad grew up. So keep an eye out for those Bouchard buckwheat products at Hannaford's all around.
Might have a bag of it in the other room. We could have brought out. You said you're further down on the mitten now. So where do you call home in Maine now, and what are some of your favorite things about that community?
I live in South Portland, so that's about a 35-minute drive from our headquarters here in Brunswick. I love living in South Portland because it has great access to all of the fun things that Portland offers. Easy to hop on 95 North to get home to my family in northern Maine. Access to the beach. I am regularly at Willard Beach with my 2 golden retrievers. And easy to also get up to the ski mountains, which is something that I love to do in the winter. So big fan of South Portland. It's like a cheat code to Portland is what I like to say.
All right. So also continuing in on some of your past, you got a Bachelor's of Science in Entrepreneurship and Policy Studies at Syracuse.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your college experience and if there was anything that professors or classes that you found particularly influential to your way of thinking and that you've brought into your career?
Sure. So I didn't realize it until I was in my mid-20s and late 20s and starting to think about doing economic development work. But my education in entrepreneurship and public affairs was actually sort of a perfect catalyst for doing work in this particular space. I had this one professor within my public affairs coursework, Professor Copeland. He's still teaching. His license plate on his Lexus, interestingly enough, always said "do good," and he was a really big proponent of this concept that you could have a career where you could do good work out in the world, but also do well. And that has really sort of stuck with me as I've sort of navigated through my career, trying to lean into opportunities to do good and do well. And so that was really sort of foundational and formational to where I've ended up in my career now. And a big part of his curriculum, funnily enough, I don't know if funny is the right word, but we read the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and a lot of the lessons and learnings that I sort of gleaned from that continue to be really applicable to my career today, both from sort of a technical standpoint, but also as it relates to managing and interacting with internal and external clients of our organization.
So how did you get your interest into finance and lending specifically?
So great question. My dad always told me that you should go work on Wall Street because that is a key to wealth and doing well in this country. And that I didn't know better, right? At 20 years old, what I should be doing or what those opportunities might look like. And so Morgan Stanley, where I spent the majority of my 20s, recruited at Syracuse, and I had the opportunity to apply for an internship at Morgan Stanley between my junior and senior years of college, and that just sort of ended up working out. I didn't have, I had that same summer, I actually had an offer, interestingly enough, to intern for the state of Maine for the Department of Labor, which is a little bit of a juxtaposed experience to like going to intern at Morgan Stanley. And so it's just kind of interesting to sort of be back here working in a, I guess, broadly adjacent space to that. But my time at Morgan Stanley, you know, was also really foundational, and just sort of thinking about the experiences of activity on Wall Street and how it affects people on Main Street, right? Like my dad was a carpenter for the majority of my life, and like things like commodity prices and interest rates, you know, decisions that were being made on Wall Street trading floor had a direct impact to his business and his ability to like grow and succeed and drive new customers and that whole kind of thing. And so it was very apparent to me that there were decisions happening on those trading floors that had a direct correlation to the lives of people on Main Street, but a lot of people on Main Street have no idea, right? That those factors were sort of affecting their lives and their livelihoods. So that was just this really sort of pivotal experience that got me really thinking about doing work that would really benefit people, doing good and doing well.
So you left Morgan Stanley, came back to Maine. You joined us here at CEI as a credit analyst in November 2019, which means that you were still getting your feet wet here as a lender and a credit analysis at a time that was really a crisis time for a lot of small businesses and people in our portfolio. So you can talk about a little bit about what sort of seems like it would be a trial by fire.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I think back about that time now, and also knowing what I know now, I think it was just this fascinating time to get to see the microcosm of CEI in action in a really rapid way, right? So you had CEI stepping up to allow borrowers to modify their loans, but then you also had CEI working with philanthropic partners to raise capital, bring in grant capital that we could use to support some of our, for example, food and ag borrowers. And then you also had CEI stepping up and partnering with the federal government to, we were not like a PPP lender, but we really sort of saw the effects and opportunities that the federal government came in to provide support to small businesses. And then we saw rapid expansion of our CEI notes portfolio during that particular time as well. So you saw how CEI's investors really stepped up and helped increase the liquidity that CEI could have to continue to support folks. So just sort of this like rapid introduction to some of CEI's tentacles and how we are able to use all of our, or many of our relationships and resources to create those supports for our clients. So really good way to learn, you know, the capacity and scope of CEI's work. And honestly, like the pace hasn't really changed all that much in 6 years. We're still very busy all of the time, and still, you know, working deeply with all of those types of partners to continue to do our work and make our impact.
Yeah, I mean, it was also interesting to sort of tie what you're talking about with what happened in the pandemic to, you know, us being in now another sort of unsettled economic environment and how those skills can come back into play. Yep. So you've been here now for a little bit over 6 years. Obviously, you have grown in your role. And CEI has also kind of grown and changed. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of what you've observed over the arc of your time here?
Sure. I think at the core, our work hasn't changed. We are still here to serve people who are underserved by the traditional financial systems. But the way that we do that has evolved. You know, we still offer some of our lots of sort of standard bread and butter type loan products, but we have also gotten really good at creating markets that didn't exist and creating loan products that create opportunity both for us, CEI, as an organization, but also for our borrowers. So I think a really great example of that is our low-cost solar loan, which CEI packages this product where we tap into some philanthropic resources that we have to make an investment in solar or renewable energy sources financially feasible for small businesses. And we're able to use those philanthropic resources to buy down the interest rate so that the loan payment that the borrower pays is less than their aggregate utility costs. And so I think that that's a really good example of how CEI uses its network, uses its learnings from 50 years of being in the business, and leans into its creativity to sort of create those opportunities. And again, like, those are really strong loans that we get to hold in the portfolio, and also they have dramatic impact for these small businesses on their cash flow, on their capacity to increase their independence. And so I think that that's and we continue to iterate on opportunities and structures like that. Again, that continue to be sort of mutually beneficial for both borrower, CEI, and the broader ecosystem.
Yeah.